Casey, the numbers have bounced around a bit in the last few days in Sydney, but they haven't been good.
No, that's right, David. We really just can't say at the moment that the curve is bending. We're looking at about 200 cases a day over the last few days, and we're starting to see some indication that the health system is starting to struggle, at least in that non-urgent elective surgeries have now been cancelled across Sydney. Contact tracers, they've fallen behind as well. These are the number of cases that were not isolated through their full infectious period each day. And I've included in that all of the cases where New South Wales Health didn't know the isolation status as of 11 o'clock in the morning each day, because we have to include those now because it's most of the cases, 120 of yesterday's, we just didn't know whether they were isolated or not. The rules, they're a bit of a patchwork at the moment across Sydney, but there's broadly two zones where most of the cases are occurring, and those 8 concerning LGAs, the toughest rules. And what we're seeing there is that the government is stepping up its policing, its enforcement kind of approach in that area, in the hopes that more compliance will push this curve down rather than up. What we're not seeing at the moment is much in the way of direct targeting of where transmission is occurring in some of those essential workplaces. We learnt yesterday of a big cluster in the freight industry. Is there more that could be done there in that industry to ensure people are mixing less? And in the rest of Sydney, it's got far fewer cases, but it's not as though the curve isn't still growing. The approach has been, when the government sees cases growing in a particular LGA, they pull them out of that and lump them in with the concerning LGAs under the tougher rules. And if that's the practice, if that's what we'll see continue, well, this isn't a prediction, but these are the LGAs that could be next. In the past week, ending Friday, Bayside had 29 cases, Strathfield 22, the Inner West and Northern Beaches both had 17 cases. In fact, all of these LGAs have had more cases in the past week than Campbelltown had the previous week, when it had 9. And this week, Campbelltown had 62 cases. David, vaccinations, they're the end game here in this pandemic, and in the coming weeks and months they will drive the reproduction number of this virus down and make outbreaks easier to control. But we really do need to see some bending in this curve, at least a stop to the growth, or we risk putting all of our health systems, our contact tracing systems, under too much strain before we see the benefit of the vaccinations.
And Casey, the vaccination targets, these thresholds that National Cabinet agreed to on Friday, how hard will they be to achieve?
Yeah, so the rules as set down on Friday evening by the Prime Minister, we need to get this 18.8% of people both fully protected up to 70 across the country. And of course, the pace of that is happening at different speeds across different states. Let me take you to this one here, where if we were to see the current pace of vaccination continue, this week's pace continue into the future, well, the ACT might get its first dose rate up to 70 by this month, in fact. New South Wales and Tasmania, they might get there in September. So that's the first doses. Add on a bit of time to get second doses into arms. Realistically, you're looking at about late November for those 3 states and territories to be 70% fully protected. Now, we're actually expecting the pace to pick up from here, so hopefully those are pretty conservative guesses. But 2 of the states that might find themselves lagging, at least on the current trends, are Queensland and WA, because they're actually administering fewer first doses than second doses at the moment. That could prove to be a throttle on their progress in the coming months. Of course, the other thing is, how ambitious is this target kind of on an international scale? Well, the 70% target is of people aged 16 plus. When you consider it as a population-wide target, it's equivalent to about 56% of the Australian population. And there are countries that have, not a lot of countries, but not most countries, that have got to that 56% threshold. Some smaller countries like Malta, it is a bit easier to get full coverage across smaller islands like that, but they've got 86% fully protected. You've got Israel, of course. They have been sitting, though, below the equivalent of our 80% threshold for quite some time. And then some larger countries that are getting to that point now. We've got the UK, we've got Canada, we've got Spain, we've got Singapore, all sitting about that 56, 55, 57% mark. And the United Kingdom is obviously lifting a lot more restrictions at the moment than Australia is even contemplating doing under Phase B. There is a big difference there, though. There is a lot more people in the United Kingdom with natural immunity because they've already had COVID-19, and that increases your herd protection. David, of course, in Australia we don't have that. Just 0.15% of Australians have had SARS-CoV-2.